Good morning, everyone. We might get started. Expect we'll have a few more rolling in. My name is Katie, and I'm one of the current co-chairs of PVOGS ANZ. And on behalf of the entire PVOGS ANZ committee, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our 2021 PVOGS ANZ Annual Women's Health Conference. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joined with us today.
Thank you, Katie. Hi, guys. I'm Jess. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, haere mai. Welcome to our conference. I would also like to acknowledge Māori as tangata whenua of Aotearoa, New Zealand. The theme of today's conference is looking into the future in ONG, an apt theme in the context of recent events.
This conference comes at a time of transition within our own PVOGS organisation. For those who don't know, PVOGS ANZ was founded in 2015 to engage with medical students and junior doctors with an interest in women's health. Over time, we've had region-specific groups crop up around Australia and New Zealand, allowing us to rapidly expand as a binational organisation. With the establishment of PVOGS Northern Territory in late 2019, PVOGS became composed of 10 independent organisations spanning across Australia and New Zealand. Whilst our organisation has largely gone from strength to strength, we want to continue to build our relationship with our members and stakeholders. And for this reason, we are currently transitioning to the formation of a company limited by guarantee, with all our groups united under one umbrella. We are also modifying our governance model so that we can strive towards our mission statement to inspire the next generation of women's health practitioners and obstetricians and gynecologists through education, mentoring, and advocacy.
This conference has been organised by our wonderful academics officers, Megan, Sam and Maddie, who worked tirelessly over the last 6 months to prepare a program that is engaging for you all. I'd also like to acknowledge the rest of our awesome exec who have all contributed to putting this program together for you, including our treasurer, Sophie, our sponsorship officer, Albert, our pubs and promos officers, Kate and Amy, our lovely IT officer, Em, and our secretary, Erin.
We will be hearing today from some esteemed individuals within the women's health space who have all been forward-thinking throughout their careers. They have been at the frontier, whether that be in organisational leadership, fighting for patient rights, or creating cultural safety. I'd also like to give a reminder about some Zoom etiquette. Please ensure you remain muted and know that our session is being recorded. If you have any questions for any of our speakers throughout the day, we ask that you type them in the question box. And if you would prefer to submit these questions anonymously, please message them to Samantha Carr through the question box as well.
Our conference, of course, wouldn't be possible without the support of our sponsors, who you will be hearing from throughout today.
We might move forward and have our amazing President Vijay. I'm very excited to announce Dr. Roach. He will be welcoming this year's conference. He has incredible experience, not only clinically, but as you all know, as the president of RANZCOG. Dr. Roach has over 20 years experience as an obstetrician and gynecologist. He is a lecturer for the University of Sydney. He is a former chairman of the Gidget Foundation, which is a wonderful not-for-profit organisation that helps to promote the importance of emotional well-being among expectant and new parents. And he has just recently been elected chair of the Migrant and Refugee Health Partnership. Dr. Roach has continued to provide us with his insights into lessons from the truly unprecedented times that we've been through and how they may inform the future of women's health. Welcome, Dr. Roach.
Hi, Sam, can you hear me? It's working, good. Thank you, thanks for the invitation. And I would also like to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people, who are the traditional custodians of the land where I live and work. And I also acknowledge the people of the Bunurong Nation, of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians on the land of where the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, our new home, College Place, sits. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands where all of you, my Australian-based colleagues, are located today, and I pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and future, for they hold the memories, traditions, cultures, and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of Australia. And just recently, I was reading the Uluru Statement from the Heart, and I would encourage all of you to read it. It's short, it's simple, and it encompasses all of the things that we say when we do acknowledgement of country, that we want to achieve justice, recognition, and respect for First Nations people. And I think that the way, and a referendum to enshrine a First Nations voice in the Constitution. And I think that the message in that, and I've been thinking about this a lot, when we talk about concepts like equality or equity or is opportunity. That's what there is. There's an opportunity for us. There's an opportunity to sit down and engage and to learn and to enjoy the people who were here first. RANZCOG is proud to be a binational specialist medical college, and RANZCOG recognises the special status of Maori as Tangata Whanaua in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and we are committed to meeting our obligations as Te Tiriti o Waitangi partners. Now, it might seem counterintuitive, but I think for those of you who know me for a while, to see me wearing this and with the background that you can see. And it is, of course, because I have impeccable taste in clothes. And in fact, my entire wardrobe is filled with shirts like this. No, but the reason why I wanted to wear this today is because I want to remind myself, and I want to remind all of you, not to take yourselves, and this is all going to be counterintuitive, not to take your studies, not to take your careers, not to take life too seriously. Because sometimes when I'm with you, I want to see you smile more. I want to see you feel more relaxed in your own skin. I want you to be able to see what I can see in you. And I think that sometimes we're so caught up in what we need to do and where we want to go to that we can forget that. And I also thought that it fits in perfectly with the theme of the conference today. I'm the past and you're the future. But I do particularly like the fact that you have a pubs and promos officer. And I do think that I would like to introduce a pubs officer to RANZCOG. So don't lose sight of words like fun. Don't lose sight of words like happiness and joy. Life should really, I think, be about engaging with life, working hard and partying hard. So reflecting back over the last 3 years, when I got the gig, I thought that all that I do is swan around the world in my robes and I'd be going to dinners and parties and that will be my life. But unfortunately, it didn't really quite work out that way. And in less than 3 weeks, after 3 very long years, I hand over the reins to Dr. Ben Bock, who's an obstetrician and gynecologist from on the Gold Coast. He's the director of O&G there. And he will be an excellent leader for the college over the next 2 years for the next council. I suppose the pandemic in the end defines what happened to the college. It's defined what's happened to all of us over the last couple of years. But having said that, the college still had to continue all of our roles. And so we have continued to deliver training and education. We've continued to deliver communication. We are the standards body for women's health in Australia and New Zealand. And I think but what I think happened during the pandemic is that there was an opportunity. There was an opportunity to build RANZCOG's brand. There was an opportunity to communicate to women and their families. And we did that right from the beginning. Within, I think, a few days of the pandemic becoming official, if you like, we issued advice to women and their families, advice that is still current, except for the recognition that the Delta strain has been more severe. More recently, we have been fierce advocates for vaccination for pregnant women, and that's involved engagement with government, writing the RANZCOG ATAGI policy, the only policy that I can see during the pandemic where 2 countries issued the same advice on the same day. I'm doing 3 webinars a week talking about vaccination of pregnant women. And the key to success, I think, is communication. And there's a lesson in that for all of you, which is that there are 3 A's in life. There is ability, there is affability, and there is availability. Now, I can be a very nice human being. I could be very clever. But if I'm not here talking to you now, then it doesn't really matter. So availability is the key. And I think that you can apply that to your clinical work as well, which is you could be the best doctor in the world, you could be the nicest doctor in the world, but if you're not there, it's not really relevant. Now, that doesn't mean you should be there 24 hours a day, every day, and you should work ridiculous hours and all that sort of stuff. But maybe you can translate that into presence. Maybe that you translate that into making sure that your patients have a sense that you are available, or that they can know that they're going to be supported. The other thing that I learned during the pandemic, and is I think a sort of lifelong thing that I feel strongly about for myself, is humility. There was so much to learn. It was so important to work with people. It was fantastic to listen to amazing leaders, infectious diseases specialists. There's a thing called the Clinical Evidence Task Force, and I co-chaired that with a leading midwife, Carolyn Homer. We learned to cross the aisle. We learned to listen to each other. We learned to work collaboratively and together. I learned to work with government, and we can yell at the television and we can have an opinion, but in the end, you need to work with people. And going into the room and going into a conversation with humility, without having to be, I'm the legend and I'm the hero or I'm in charge here, I think has been really valuable. And I do think, again, going back to your theme, that was the past, that the message for doctors was very different, that you're a doctor, you're the repository of knowledge, you know what you're doing, and it's your obligation to impart that to the patient. And there was a gendered element to that as well. But even today, we need to now break out of that concept. We need to realize that our role is to be knowledgeable and to have expertise, but it's to engage with the patient, to listen to her, to have her input. The concept of shared decision-making is not something that we need to be scared of. And in fact, it's something that we can be liberated by, because we don't need to have that pressure. So today it looks like it's going to be a very exciting program. You're going to learn about pathology and pathophysiology. You're going to learn about what you need to know, what you need to do, and how to do it. But I think that there's another thing. I think there's another message which I think is really important, is understanding your why. And so, in desperate hope that this will work, and Sam, you might need to come on to make sure that you can, just to tell me that you can hear it.
All those great leaders and all those great organizations, everything from Martin Luther King to Apple Computers, it doesn't matter. Big companies, small companies, in every single industry. All those that command great loyalty, people. Loyalty is a feeling. Loyalty is a feeling, a human feeling. All those that command loyalty from employees and from customers and from investors. Every single one of them, regardless of their industry, thinks, acts, and communicates the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everybody else. All I did was write it down. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. It's a bullseye. In the middle is the word why. The center ring is the word how. And the outside ring is the word what. It's this little idea that distinguishes those that survive those 3 years. And more importantly, it's this little idea that is able to inspire people to join you in your pursuit. Every single organization on the planet knows what they do. You know the products you sell and the services you offer. Some organizations know how they do what they do. These are the things that we think make us special or better or stand out from our competition. But not very many organizations can clearly state why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit, that's a result. By why, I don't mean to have an exit strategy. By why, I mean what's your purpose, what's your cause, what's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why did you get out of bed this morning? And why should anyone care? As a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. We tell people what we do, we tell them how we do it, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, support, a vote, working hard. But all the inspired leaders, those with the capacity to inspire, every single one of them, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, thinks, acts, and communicates from the inside out. They all start with why. I use Apple very frequently because they're easy to understand and we all get it. If Apple were like everyone else, a piece of communication from them would sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? That's normal. Here's our new technology company. We have these features and that features, and we're better than our competition in this way. We're simpler and have a better user interface. Choose us. This is normal. Here's our law firm. We have all the best lawyers. We went to all the best schools. We win all of our cases. Choose us. This is the norm. But all the inspiring leaders and all the inspiring organizations do it differently. This is how Apple actually does it. They start here. Everything we do, they say, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? It feels different. You want to join me in this pursuit, not because my computers are better, but because you believe what I believe.
So just in case you're tempted to think, oh, well, that's got to do with selling products, or that's got to do with being a company, or whatever it is, let's try and put that into a medical context. Because in a medical context,
people with ADHD save 10 hours studying with this Chrome extension. But no, by all means, go ahead, skip the ad, save a few seconds.
I have to do a lot of reading for.
There's a little tip: no matter how hard you try, you'll have a glitch. So does this apply to doctors? And okay, I'm not asking you about whether you're selling yourself or whatever it is, but in the end, for the patient who's coming into your office, she's saying, I need to understand, and I'm actually assuming that you're competent. I'm actually assuming that you have done your studies, that you've passed your exams, that you've been appropriately trained, that you're being appropriately supervised, that you're going to check my results, all that sort of stuff. But what she wants to, and you might not necessarily articulate this, but in some way she wants to get a sense that she matters. She wants to get an understanding as to why you got out of bed in the morning. And we know that often patients can walk away from a consultation realizing the truth, which is that they didn't actually matter, that they were just a tick box exercise, that you needed to take a history, do an examination, say, okay, well, you have appendicitis and we need to remove your appendix, and that's all that there was. And that's fine. I'm not imposing that on you. I'm not saying that you need to, and I'm also not trying to take us to some big leap in which you hold her hand and discuss the meaning of life with her. But think about your mother, your sister, yourself, your friend, and the vulnerability that that human might feel. And think about what is it that you want to do for her? Is it purely that you want to cure her appendicitis or deliver her baby, or is it in some way that you want to give more of that? And when you look ahead, I mean, PVOGS is really an extraordinary organisation, and maybe you could think about the organisation itself in terms of your how, what, and why. You're driven people, you know, you're ambitious, and you're looking down the road. But what I want you to do is to pause and ask yourself, why did I start on this pathway? Most of you will be postgraduate students. Why did you say actually, or maybe you'd said it before, but at what point did you decide this is a career that you want to have? Because medicine's not just medicine's what I'm doing now. Medicine's talking to students on a Saturday morning. It's being a doctor 24 hours a day. It never leaves your head. It's something that is all encompassing. You can't have that sort of work-life balance concept. You need to have a work-life integration because it never stops. But I want you to be mindful in that pursuit. I want you to not just be concentrating so far down the future, that you're not thinking about how you got to this point and why you want to be in that future. And then the other thing that'll come up, and I know Michael's going to talk to you about the selection program and getting onto training and whatever career you pursue in women's health, your what might be your high school results, the courses you've done, your work experience. That's what happens straight away. You know, we get that CV and someone's presenting themselves. That's their elevator pitch. Yeah, how it might be, well, you know, the reason that I got here is because I studied really hard and I'm really dedicated. And I went to all the meetings and I did all the courses, and I think, oh, wow, you know, that's really great. But I don't, because in fact, that makes you equivalent to everybody else. And in fact, that's what you should do if you want to be a competent doctor. Last night, we sat on a conference, part of FIGO, Federation of International Gynecologists and Obstetricians Conference, and we discussed First Nations health, and we heard about Aboriginal experience, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander experience, we heard about Maori experience, we heard about the stolen generation, we heard about how that had just happened, not just happened, how it's been happening in Canada and the discovery of all of those graves. We heard about the American Indians and their experience, and the Mexican tribes. And then we listened to a doctor called Glenn Moller, who's in Port Moresby, and he's been there for all of his career. And he talked about sitting with women, and he's probably doing it today now as we speak, who have been infected with COVID, pregnant women, and who are dying from respiratory failure. And when I talked to him separately, he said to me that it had been a long time since he had been so deeply affected by death, something that he would have seen in Papua New Guinea before. But when he talked, he didn't tell us what he did, and he didn't tell us how he did, and he didn't necessarily even articulate it, but you had a sense of why he did it. He did it because he cared. He did it because he is a compassionate and kind and decent human being. And he did it because he gets up in the morning to change the world one human at a time. And I found that inspiring. So I'm not asking you to take on some kind of Gandhian role. I don't want you to sacrifice everything and become some kind of saint. I don't think that life is all about being some extraordinary, selfless human being. But I just want to challenge you, when you think about the way that you communicate, when you think about the recipient of the messages that you give, when you think about yourself, why? Because the why sustains you. The why keeps you going. The why gives you a reason to get out of bed in the morning. My why with all of you is because I think that you're extraordinary, because I get a buzz out of being in your presence. I love the idea that you're bright-eyed, that you're excited, that you can't wait to hear all the talks today, that you want to learn about obstetrics and gynecology, that you want to go and look after all of those women. That's my why. And so then it makes it easy to get up on a Saturday morning and chat to you. But you need to find yours. But you also need to know that as doctors, we're in a position of power. And so therefore, knowing your why and in some way communicating that to your audience, who's your patient, who really doesn't have much choice. She's sitting there. She just needs you. If you have an understanding of why you've arrived there, then that helps you to communicate that to your patient. And I think that for her, that makes a huge difference. So today you're going to hear from a lot of amazing humans, my friends and colleagues over many years. And I'm really pleased that you're going to talk about birthing on country. Going back to the humility, I sat on a webinar, me and 700 midwives, to talk about home birth. Well, that was interesting, but I learned a lot. And one of the things that I learned was from a Professor Hannah Darlin, who's a midwife, who I've had clashes with in the past, who I have a different perspective on, who hasn't always been a friend of obstetricians. But she said something to me which really resonated, which is that our concepts of safety as doctors, the medical concept of safety, is very much about blood loss. It's about doing a safe forceps delivery. It's about looking at the CTG. It's about making sure that someone doesn't die. All very obvious, all very clear. But we can't impose that paradigm on the people that we're looking after, because they don't necessarily look at the world in exactly the same way. And perception of risk and awareness of risk is very different for each human being. And so for that woman, one of the things that you need to think about is, what does safety mean to her? And I think the discussion of birthing on country will bring that out, because cultural safety, which is not something that we give a lot of thought to, because we think, well, if you're well and you know the baby's well and you had your delivery, then everything's good. Well, no, because in fact, I didn't feel safe in this environment. And I didn't like being dislocated from my country and from my family. And I don't think that that just applies to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. But I do think that their deep connection and spirituality and connection to the land are, again, what we can learn from. So cultural safety is also critical to good clinical care. And of course, you'll also hear from Jason and Michael and Caroline and Ia. And so those first three, we go back a very long time. And they are intelligent, competent, caring, dedicated, amazing doctors and amazing speakers. So, and I think that I know why they do what they do, because there isn't some secondary gain, there isn't some belief in themselves, there isn't some sort of thought that they have to be there. They do it because they care about the patients they care about, and the reason that they're there today is because they care about you. So it seems a bit funny, really, to think that after 3 years in this leadership role, that I won't be president in 2 weeks' time, but I don't think that that means that I have to go away. I hope that my connection with all of you now in your junior years and into the future remains. I want to wish you every success today. I want to wish you success in your career in women's health, in medicine. Don't get hung up on becoming a specialist. It isn't always all that it's cut out to be. There are many, many ways to look after women, and being an obstetrician and gynecologist is simply one of them. And the reason for coming to How, What, Why is not just about the women you will look after. It's not just about getting a job. It's not just about trying to communicate that to an outside world, but it's also because my last message to all of you is that you matter. You as an individual, you the person, you're valuable. And in all the time that I've spent with the individuals at PVOGS, with so many students, every time I come away having learnt so much more, being inspired, appreciating you. And so wake up in the morning and think about your why. And part of that why is because you're valuable and you matter. So I hope you have a really happy day today. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. And I look forward to seeing you in a room together or at the pub with your pub officer very, very soon. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Vijay. That was fantastic. It's always so inspiring to hear you speak. It was just wonderful. Thank you. If anybody has questions, please send them through, either through to me or through to the general chat. Vijay, I do have a couple of questions here for you, if that's okay. They're quite deep. What lessons have you learnt about yourself and your leadership style as the president of RANZCOG?
That's a really good question, Sam. And in fact, we did a webinar yesterday. It was based in Perth, and we got asked those questions. There was 4 of us who were on the call, and there was the president of the midwives, our CEO, myself, and I thought about it, and I thought, actually, the best thing that you can do as a leader is to empower others. Now, I think there are some buzzwords around those, but I don't want to know them. The bottom line is that if you, Sam, are sitting there feeling more confident because of a conversation that we had, because you know I believe in you, then that's a great thing. And I will have a leadership role. You are saying nice things about me. I'll have a job to do, all that sort of stuff. So I don't need to then grab the headlines anymore. There's no need. I want you to grab the headlines. I want to see somebody else succeed. So I don't know if necessarily I learnt that, but it was more that I think that that's been my style all along, which is to empower others to succeed. And that's where I get my greatest pleasure. And then one thing I did learn, though, and I think that's a sort of lifelong thing, and I think it's hard for all of us because we're perfectionists, and you can think of clinical situations where you get something wrong, or if you fail an exam. Well, I failed lots of exams, so I was quite good at that. But in other circumstances, and I think that I learned that one can't be perfect in this setting, that you can't, that sort of line, that you can't please all of the people all the time. And accepting that was really hard because you want to be liked. That's what normal people do. But I learned to come to terms with the fact that there would always be a group of disgruntled members, or that you might not say something that everybody in the public agreed with. You're going to have Ia speaking to you this afternoon. I mean, she is a legend, a leader in abortion law reform. And I have had a small role in New South Wales when we decriminalised abortion law, and I had to learn that there was a large percentage of the community that didn't agree with me, that didn't live in my echo chamber. And I had to speak to them respectfully even though I didn't agree with their point of view. So I think that was a really important leadership lesson, because if I'd gone to town, if I'd been rude and abusive, then it would never have gone anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question, if that's okay, Vijay. The response to the COVID pandemic has demonstrated our ability to work collaboratively and to make change quickly. How do you think we can harness this inertia to make changes in other areas in women's health, particularly within vulnerable groups?
Yeah, really good. And again, that's my wavelength. And we had the Ranscog Women's Health Summit in Canberra a few weeks ago. And the thing that I said should be the subtitle of it was Time to Act. In other words, and this is quite interesting, given the bureaucratic roles that I've got, it's so boring. And I have to sit around these round tables all the time, and we have all these long documents, and no one references any of the work that's ever been done before. And you think, well, what are we doing? Are we just having another meeting so that we can all then produce some glossy brochure and nothing's ever going to change? And are we actually going to call it out? If we're going to talk about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander issues, are we going to use the words like racism? Because that's at the bottom of it all. Are we going to address issues like social inequity and the social determinants of health and life? Or are we just going to pretend that, oh, well, we've got a new project and let's do that? So I feel very ambitious in my role with the Migrant and Refugee Health Partnership, and I felt it during my time with Ranscog, is that it's time to act. It's time to stop talking. PVOGS did that fantastic thing around period poverty. It's time to stop. And I know that Melbourne Council, for example, now provides free tampons and pads, and Ranscog is looking at trying to lift that up, that discussion. So absolutely, let's just do it, rather than this nonsense of let's just have another chat about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's going to be all of our ways going forward. We've really demonstrated our ability to make change. So it's really about harnessing that and pushing forward. Vijay, thank you so much for your time. We're so grateful for giving up your Saturday morning to teach us.
So nice to see you.
Always inspiring.
Happy time today. And I'll look forward to catching up with all of you soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Vijay.